Welcome to the Infinite Improvisation Podcast, Adventures in Music and Creativity. I'm Lauren Best, and I'm here with Steve Treseler.
Hello.
Hello. So we're back for another mini episode.
Yeah.
And this one we're focusing on play.
Play, yeah. One of our 5 creative practices. The first mini episode is on experimentation. So now play. I mean, we say that we play music, right? Mm-hmm. But sometimes it doesn't feel like people are playing when they're grinding through, some drills or have a demanding teacher breathing down their neck. So getting back into the play.
Yeah, and I feel like in some ways it's the most natural, children play, right? Like we were born to play. It's in some ways so easy, so natural, but it can also be very elusive. Mm-hmm. If you tell someone to have fun or to play, yeah. Or like sometimes people can run with that and they can be like, oh yeah, okay, I'll have fun. But sometimes it can feel awkward and it can feel hard to instruct yourself even to be playful. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's natural. We all played when we were kids. As adults, we still like, we still like playful activities. But as you said, it's a forced situation that can be tough. I mean, imagine I've seen groups of kids that are running around and playing, and some adult comes, okay, well now it's time to play pin the tail on the donkey and do presents, and we need to play this game. So, and it then suddenly the play is not happening when it's forced.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Or sometimes the play can be so complex that if someone describes to me a really complicated game, I often would, I'll feel overwhelmed. I won't feel nearly as playful sometimes. But that being said, sometimes once you know the game, those additional rules and elements kind of add to the playfulness and add to the fun.
So how do you see as playfulness helping spark creativity or improvisation?
Well, we were talking about curiosity in our last episode, and experimentation actually. And I think a lot of play is about observation and curiosity and kind of seeing what happens. Like you give a baby a ball and they see what happens when they throw it. And if you give a bigger kid a ball, they might act with it in different ways, but often they'll do things that are pretty simple with it, right? Like they'll throw it up in the air and catch it, or they'll throw it against a wall, or they'll, create an invitation by throwing it to you. So I'm inspired a lot by seeing what kids do and seeing how kids play, and how kids play in situations where they aren't asked to play, but they play anyways, and the playfulness is like an organic part of the learning and of the experimentation, because they observe and they explore things and they're curious, and it kind of naturally leads to play.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was just playing. My daughter was playing piano down here the other day, and I know her piano teacher's working with her on exploring the piano and even preparing the strings and putting paper in the strings. So sometimes she brought me down. I thought that she needed help with one of her pieces, but she just wanted to jam. And we had like the mallets and the brushes from the drums and was like playing them on the strings. And then I was like, oh, what happens if I hit the pedal? And then we were doing this prepared piano piece, but I was all ready to help her with fingerings for something, but she was ready to explore. Yeah, we made some sounds in the piano I'd never heard before because we're in play mode. We could very well turn into a piece, but yeah, we can get lots of guidance from kids in this in this regard. And
she's approaching something unconventionally too. Like you were saying, you were ready to help with fingerings and kind of problem solving, like the process of this kind of linear, like goal-oriented thing. But by looking at it unconventionally and thinking about playing the strings in different ways, it opens up different aspects. And I think the freedom to play in ways that may not be how it's initially suggested to play. Like, I guess there's different kinds of play too, right? Like there's play within a game where there's kind of like a rules and a structure and it's set up. There's like serious play. I know there's different definitions of serious play, but like kids aren't always laughing and having fun when they're playing. Sometimes they're they're, play acting really dramatic rescues that are very high stakes, and there's some really deep drama going on there, but they're still like it is playful and they are playing. And like free play, that we can come at things like with really unconventional angles where it's not necessarily as bound by rules as like a game.
Yeah, and this is also, as we talked about before, the difference between linear skill development versus a more nonlinear creative process. And they don't, and the two can work together too. They're not necessarily, there's not a dichotomy between the two. Sort of depends on how you're approaching it and what you're doing. But the play, it's not going to be efficient.
Yeah.
At achieving the goal. So here's this, a quote I wanted to read from Stephen Nachmanovich from Free Play, Improvisation in Life and Art. A couple quotes from this book I want to share in this episode. But he says, anthropologists have found, quote, galumphing to be one of the prime talents that characterize higher life forms. So galumphing is immaculately rambunctious and seemingly inexhaustible play energy apparent in puppies, kittens, children, baby baboons. And we galumph when we hop instead of walk, when we take the scenic route instead of the efficient one, when we play a game whose rules demand a limitation of our powers, when we are interested in means rather than in ends, and we voluntarily create obstacles in our path and then enjoy overcoming them. And in higher animals and in people, it is of supreme evolutionary value.
Yeah.
So it pays to not be efficient. Take the scenic route, or same thing as you could do that. Oh, we're gonna hop on one foot, or only step on the shady spots. And
yeah, and I suppose so. Play like improvisation, but play like we have to give up part of the plan. I was thinking of taking the scenic route, and basically I was thinking about how we might not categorize that as play, but we can kind of insert play by changing our plan. By sometimes I won't plan to take the scenic route, and I think, I could pause. I'll take a pause. I'll take a minute. I'll go out of my way, and I don't necessarily have a plan for what I'll do. And I, in fact, had to abandon my other plan. But it often ends up being that by kind of inviting that unknown and making that choice. Well, sometimes it just means I have some really beautiful moments on that scenic route, or with myself. But it can kind of invite other ways of thinking and stuff.
Yeah,
I guess that's a little less rambunctious, but
yeah,
I love the
less rambunctious, but
too.
It's not but the not efficient. Just for the sensory appeal of doing it, or but it is a way of solving. It is a way of solving problems, even when they may be trivial, as not stepping on a crack on the sidewalk. But the scenic route, or I think about taking a walk through an unfamiliar town. Well, where am I going to turn? I don't. If you're not following a map, and just kind of letting your intuition guide you, and you have a unique experience that you couldn't necessarily have just planned out. Or I'll take another route. Like, I haven't been down this road before. Let's see where it goes.
Yeah, and I like that because it's kind of like, don't get me wrong, I love the rambunctious energy too, but I like that because it's like a small, manageable type of chaotic good, like it's choosing this small bit of play. But I think there's also something to be said for kind of creating a sandbox for yourself, or whether that's a certain amount of time that you're going to give yourself a lot more freedom to play, or whether that's a certain energy, like coming at things with that as you're saying, that kind of puppy wrestling vibe, like either that or a different like, I think sometimes it's the energy we come to things with, right? And how we're framing our experience with that kind of intention, and sometimes it's a matter of like giving ourselves a chance to laugh and to fail and to learn in these ways that are maybe broader than the path that we would plan out.
Yeah, and I find that this playful element, it can be disarming for people that like are more inviting, and it's not necessarily that we have to do, taking the edge off it, having to be really, really serious or really precious. And they use that a lot in my teaching. A story that comes to mind, I was teaching it was at a middle school. I was doing some saxophone coaching, and I walked by the brass sectional, and the tuba player who plays in orchestras, and if he was leading this brass group, and he saw me, and he like waved me in. He's like, "Hey, I'm trying to teach these guys to improvise. We're doing a brass band song, and we teach them the groove, and then trying to get them to improvise a little bit, teaching them a blues scale or something." And there's this French horn player sitting there. He crosses his arm, and he looks at me, and he's like, "I am not playing a solo. I'm not improvising." I was like, "We're not improvising here. We're just going to play the question-answer game." He's like, "Oh, okay." So I'm like, "You're going to play a phrase that goes up, and then, your friend here is going to play it goes down." I got them just playing conversations back and forth, and then I let him know that I tricked him into improvising. But as soon as it's the game, same thing when I go in and do those classes, I don't want someone to say, "Steve's coming in, he will teach you all how to improvise." I'm like, "No, we're playing a game, or we're messing around, and what would happen if we do this?" Getting into the experimentation side. And there can be a lot of novelty involved, which might seem silly, but it gets people to take some of those risks, to be spontaneous and expressive and listen and interact with other people and what they're hearing. And then that can pivot to some more listening and or just more intensive kind of activities that might not have the silliness, but you feel more comfortable with the process and with the people. So I find it to be super effective as a teaching tool and as a learning tool for myself.
Yeah, and it's a little different when there's other people. Like it can be, well, especially because you don't know what your play partner's experience is, right? Like it kind of creates more of that unknown and more of that novelty because you're, or especially in a group. And you see other people laughing. And so it's easier to, I think, disarm ourselves and to kind of try to control the situation less and enter into some different ways of thinking and ways of being, where we let ourselves be in the game, and whether we're being in the game as kind of with the feeling of a leader or the feeling of a follower or the feeling of being a little bit competitive or the feeling of being like very cooperative, it can kind of lend taking things to some different places. I really like playing solo. Like I really like wandering around alone sometimes or like, rolling around on the floor and dancing and stuff and kind of doing some of that stuff totally on my own. But it's a different thing than when you're able to bounce ideas off of other people. And I'm just constantly inspired by children and animals and seeing the funny things they do, and then like seeing what some of those templates are of, well, either like taking turns, right? Turn taking on its own becomes a structure for play. And other things that really translate to music around, turn taking, but also copying, like kind of matching each other in energy or in body language, or deliberately contrasting, like in some of these elements of play that I just love observing what young kids do or animals. I saw a bird harassing another bird, and it was, doing these very like funny little motions of flying up at the bird and then like dropping down. And that was just something I saw way up high in a tree, but it was such a clear, funny little moment that like taking something like that could, you could base a whole game off of that, or a whole musical concept off of just this one little observed moment. I find getting outside of my own human brain and well, I'm observing with my human brain, but you know what I mean? Like taking inspiration from how other people play rather than being like, I need to be the source of the play, being like, oh, I'll just pretend I'm that bird, or I'll pretend I'm that baby,
Yeah, and when we get into that mode with our art, that we can be playful, not that it's not important or not serious or trivial, but being in the playful mode, we can start to feel safer about generating more and getting into the experimentation that we were talking about earlier. And it's just a much better frame of mind to be in, rather than like, oh, this has to be, I need to make something good right now, or getting all these other expectations or.
Well, and yeah, the frame of mind and the mindset, like I think we all have a sense of like what kinds of attitudes result in play that tends to be more or less successful for us as people. Like, we know that if we drag our feet showing up to the park and kind of hang our head and, whine our way through our park experience, we might not have as many kids wanting to play with us, right? Like we've seen that. And I mean, some kids have days like that at the park anyways, right? But like, that's a really like kind of easy to understand thing. But I think sometimes as adults, we can be nervous about our own creativity and sometimes approach it with like a sense of anxiousness or a sense of like dragging your feet a little or getting down on ourselves. And I think thinking of it as play lets us think of like, how do I want to be entering into this playful realm? And like there are times where we take ourselves very seriously in play, but I think being in play helps us take ourselves less seriously overall in a good way. Like, like we can respect ourselves still without necessarily like being in our heads,
Absolutely. And yeah, I've seen it with some of my music students too, some that became the most highly skilled players and some have gone on to be professional players when they were young. They were just, you couldn't take the horn out of it. They're just playing and playing and playing, and they weren't being super disciplined about it. Sometimes I'd been like, well, now you need to do this exercise or make sure you articulate properly. And now I'm more likely to just kind of let them go for a while because they're just working things out and playing. And it didn't seem like work, although they were developing the skills. I mean, to some degree when I was younger too, I just liked playing my saxophone at the age where I was improved the most, probably in high school. And I've heard, teachers, trying to tell their students to practice more and like, well, Steve, how much did you practice when you were in high school? I'm like, I don't remember. I just like getting my horn out and play after dinner. I'm like, I'm going to go play some tunes and just go. Yeah. And it felt like play, and it's can be aligned very much with skill development.
Yeah, and sometimes too, it's like taking those meandering approaches to skill development, where like it is silly sometimes, or it is chaotic sometimes. Like I find so many kids are really excited to play their instrument, but it's like a lot. You know what I mean? Like they want to play it so much that like it can be very tempting to be like, that's not really music. Like, slow down. Like, why don't you try something that I'm showing you? Like, you know what I mean? To really, and there are times to rein things in for various reasons, but it's sometimes by really exploring like the intensity we can, or like the many ideas they have, we can work with that, and we don't like teach kids to run, or I mean, we don't teach kids to run. I'll just put it there. Kids run because they learn to walk and then they run because like they're excited to run, and we don't like put them on a track right away and time them, like they run in many different ways. They run in silly ways. They run like in different places. Like, we don't necessarily like drill them on the type of running that is the final outcome. We let them meander around with it,
Yeah. They didn't have to have a grading rubric for running in order to teach them how to run. Yeah.
Yeah, and then they experiment with it in different ways,
Yeah, I guess and finally, I wanted to pivot to another another angle on play. This is another quote from Stephen Nachmanovich's book Free Play, about playfulness, but also as we're creating new work. So, and he says there's an old Sanskrit word lila, which means play. Richer than our word, it means divine play, the play of creation, destruction, and recreation, the folding and unfolding of the cosmos. Leela, free and deep, is both the delight and enjoyment of this moment and the play of God. It also means love.
I will always love that quote.
Yeah, I read it last season too. I keep coming back to it. So the type of play, whatever your beliefs are on the creation of the universe or however that happened, but just imagine, I'm imagining, the creative force of that playful creation energy of putting new works of art out into the world. So it can have that kind of depth of meaning, and not just dogs playing at the dog park. We're talking about this, and it's could all be related too. But
well, and I think of kids too, right? And we lovingly nurture their play, and we lovingly create space for them to play. And that, like, especially when they're very, very young, right? Like we're holding the space for them to just play and be creative and explore things in different ways. And I love the idea of that loving energy behind it. like I know I talked about, there can be serious play or like competitive play, or like there can be different energies to it, but I love the idea of just coming back to it being like a loving kind of supportive energy around being playful. Yeah.
And again, this is to wrap up this how episode. So we'll get, as we go, we'll even come up with some more practical kind of prompts and things you can work with. But these first two, especially experimentation and play, it's really so much about the mindset that you're and the way that you're approaching this work, which may be different from how you've learned skills in the past, where can be very, as we talked about, very linear or prescriptive and measured, but embracing gathering data as a scientist and skipping down the sidewalk as a baby baboon.
Yeah, and I will be envisioning skipping down the sidewalk with my baby baboon for the rest of the day as I go off and play.
Well, and now I learned something about you, that you roll around on the ground by yourself to play.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a theater thing. Like get low, like get to the ground, and see how the supportiveness of the ground can. That's actually like when you lie down. You experience gravity in a different way, which, that sounds obvious, but literally when we're standing, we're working against gravity. When we lay down, like the way we're able to be supported without needing to activate our balance in the same way, I find I really appreciate the change in perspective. And not only is it an awesome tool for like physical work and kind of rehabilitative work around physicality and stretching and strength and things there. I find that it very literally gives me a different perspective on things.
Sometimes it gives me a perspective on like, oh, maybe I need to vacuum.
Maybe I'll do the next podcast episode from the ground.
Wow.
We'll ground ourselves.
Yeah. Oh, I was about to go on a riff about that, but that will defeat our intention to keep this as a mini episode.
Yeah, so we'll give you guys some ways to play, but please tell us how you like to play too.